the Pacific Crest Trail is 2,650 miles long, and you decided, you know what I'm going to do is I'm going to hike the whole length of that, and I'm going to do it, I guess, as quickly as I can possibly do, which you have achieved. Why did you decide that was something that you wanted to do?
I don't have a specific moment in time that I can pinpoint where I said, like, oh, I want to do the trail right now, but it's been something that's been in the back of my head for a long time. And I just felt really a pull to do it this year. I felt like the timing really lined up. I was right about at the 2 year mark at the job that I was working. I was ready to do something different. And I just really wanted to spend a lot of time in nature. I've moved around a lot my entire life, and I don't have one place in the world where I would consider to be my home or somewhere that I really return to as home. So for me, nature has always really felt like that space that I can come back to. And so it didn't feel like that far of a reach to be like, oh, I just want to live in nature for roughly 5 months. And so that's what I decided to do. I quit my job and I, flew across the country, sold a bunch of my things, and made hiking my life. So
It's actually amazing because I think it's a lot of people would say, "Oh, I'd love to just quit my job and go and do that and be in nature and explore somewhere new and do all of these things." How did you find the courage to do that? As in, there's one thing deciding, okay, I'm going to do that, and then there's quitting your job, and then there's saying, okay, I'm going to pack up my stuff and I'm going to sell my stuff, and then there's actually getting on the plane and going to do it, and then there's completing it. So there's actually quite a lot of different stages there that you could kind of turn back. It's not as simple as you've decided you're going to do it and then next day you're doing it. There's a lot of different stages of courage that it takes to do it, and you also did a lot of it solo. Let's not forget that detail. So how was that before you actually went? How was that journey into getting to the point? Because it's almost, when you get to the first day, you've almost got to the easy bit because you've got all of the things sorted and you're there to do it.
yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things, just like whenever you plan any trip that you're doing, it's like everything kind of comes together at the last minute, no matter how much you've tried to plan, no matter how much research you've tried to do beforehand. You never really know what you've got yourself into on whatever level until you're actually there, until you're actually doing it. So there were so many surprises along the way. But in terms of the taking the steps to leave my job and like move across the country and do something completely unexpected, like it definitely is a place of you have to sit with the discomfort of like this could turn out in many different ways. I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but I just had almost an uncanny sense of I really feel like this is what I'm supposed to be doing right now. And I've never really felt like that strong of a pull towards something. I just had like a deep gut feeling. And through a lot of different experiences in my life, I've come to really trust my intuition. And that just felt so right. And so I never doubted that decision, even though it's like I was like, oh, I know I'm leaving a stable job with like a stable, like good income, and I'm like leaving a lot of friends and leaving a lot of like people I love and care about behind. But I think I don't know, it was just really exciting to me and it felt like just what I was supposed to do. So I didn't ever doubt the decision, and I don't have any regrets about that either.
It's interesting because a lot of your content that you've posted on social media, kind of documenting through the journey and lots of real updates as well. So the less good moments, the less glamorous moments, as well as the freedom of being able to hike through nature and enjoy that freedom. You have, one video you kind of describe how you're hiking through a meadow one day and a mountain the next, and then it's forest and then it's desert. And I'm sure it's not day by day, but you get to go through all of this amazing nature. Has this like changed your appreciation of nature, of the world around you, of the cities that we live in, while there's so much beauty and nature about, and that kind of feeling of you could even call it like existential crisis of, oh my goodness, like what actually are we doing out here? Like there's so much beauty around us. We are so small. These mountains have been here for so long before us and so long after us. Even trees, which are living things, are there like so much time before us and so much time after us. Was there any moments of that just pure admiration for the world?
Yeah, I think there was so many sensory experiences that I got to have along the trail just because you're having this time and space in nature that is just so calming. And you can just really feel all of the energy around you in a different way than I've ever experienced, like, living in our modern society. And it's actually something that I've been struggling with now that I've finished the trail, coming back to society, readjusting to like going through cities and being surrounded by so many people and like all of these concrete boxes all around everywhere that we live in. And it's just kind of a surreal experience because when you spend that long in nature, something beautiful really starts to happen. And I would describe that as your mind just starting to open. And when we're in everyday society, your brain knows how to tune out all the things that aren't important. It's tuning out any background sounds, any whatever. You're not actively perceiving everything that's in your environment. But when you have this deep sense of quiet and expansiveness, especially I think the Sierras were a really magical part of the trail for me. I just got to hear absolutely everything around me. And I remember like there was this one day where I was just taking a break, sitting on a rock, looking up at some trees, and I heard kind of a rushing in the distance. And my first thought was like, is that a road? And I realized it was actually a giant river that wasn't that far from me. And the fact that all that I can hear and all in my surroundings was just different facets of nature is just so beautiful. And now coming back and being off the trail, places that I used to find like calming or a place where I could accomplish work now are full of distraction because my brain is perceiving everything around me in a way that I just learned to tune out in the past.
Did you have any moments of, I guess, revelation of just, I don't know, moments where they just stick out in your mind of particular awe of what's around you?
Yeah, in the Sierras especially, we would get up. So I guess for anyone that's listening to this and doesn't have experience hiking or mountaineering, the Sierras, when you entered on the PCT, there is snow, so you have to bring like an ice axe, you have to bring microspikes, and you want to start hiking early in the morning because early in the morning it's cooler. The sun hasn't hit the side of the mountain where the snow is, so it's harder, and that's when your microspikes are going to be the most effective. And you don't want a post hole, which is where like essentially you step and you fall through the snow, and it's can be really really slow going. So we would essentially get up sometimes like 3 o'clock in the morning, start hiking, get over these mountain passes that were the snowy sections, and it was just really a magical experience to watch the sun rise over the passes. You're starting off, it's dark, you have your headlamp on, you're walking up to these snowy areas. And I was hiking with a few different people at that point because especially when you're doing river crossings, when you're doing like snow sections, it's safer to have other people in case you do need emergency assistance. But wow, I don't even know how to put into words what's out there. It's really beautiful. You get to watch the sun illuminate all of the rocks around you. You watch the mountains change color. You watch everything come alive. And I think truly there's an appreciation to be found in each section of the trail, and each section is so different. And that's one thing I loved about the PCT, and I think is different from some of the other through hikes that are available, is that you get to walk through so many different types of environments. You're starting off in the desert, and then you're in snowy mountains, and then you're in like the alpine lake areas, and then you're in Oregon, and just it's just so different. And I really can't put into words, and I don't think it's totally explainable until you just do it. But I can't recommend it more to anyone. I think it's one of the best things I've done in my life.
Isn't it funny? It's 147 days that you
Mhm.
did the the trail, and it's probably fair to say it's changed your life and your
Mhm.
perception of what life is. The overstimulation of just everyday life, that we don't even realize, like how you said when you came back to, I guess, normality, you could say you're getting distracted by all these things that we're just used to, which are often conveniences of you can watch TV anywhere in your house. You can go on the internet anywhere. You can do anything you want. You can microwave your food anywhere. All of these little things, the distractions, the easy conveniences that actually take us so far away from nature, from all of these things that then cause a huge amount of anxiety because there's just so many options, there's so many pressures. But it's like pressure to do what? I think it's interesting, isn't it? Because it's when you're sitting, say, in an alpine clearing next to a lovely river, and you're sitting there, you're just thinking, well, this is where I'm supposed to be. I guess it's interesting how you talk about that sense of peace that you found when you were out there, feeling like this is where you're supposed to be. Not that, oh my goodness, I wonder how many Instagram videos I've missed out on because I've not been able to get signal today. It's interesting, isn't it, how that sense of calm is actually found when you have the least amount of things that you possibly could have.
Yeah, and I think I don't remember who, someone I was hiking with. I mean, another beautiful part of the trail is the community and the people that you get to meet along the way, because there's this shared sense of what you're doing, because you are embarking on this journey solo. Most people start the trail by themselves. Some people start with a friend or a partner, but I would say the vast majority do start out alone, and some people form trail families and meet different people along the way. And I've had some really interesting conversations with people along the trail. And one conversation that I had with someone, it was about how I think there's a lot of discussion about how it's like, oh, you're a person that's into nature, like you're, a nature person. It's like, no, like we are nature. You don't get to be into nature. We are one and the same. How is this so different? And I think that like the way that our modern society is set up really separates us from feeling that community with nature itself. And I think for me, it was a really beautiful experience to be able to return to, I guess, my roots, for lack of a better word.
Yeah, it's funny that because not only are we part of the community of nature, but even community with other humans, there's so much separation in everyday life. Whereas you're hiking along a trail with a stranger and you're not thinking, oh my goodness, are they going to steal something from me? Or should I speak to them? Maybe they'll ignore me. Or do you know all of these things that if you're like if there's one person in a street and it's wherever, you might not think, oh, this is great, I'm going to have a lovely conversation with him. So it's very interesting. So overall, how would you say the Pacific Crest Trail went?
I don't think like there's one word or one way to describe the whole thing, because for me, in some ways I can say, oh, it was just 147 days, but for me, it really felt like it could have been a lifetime. And in some ways, now coming back to society, I feel so different. And I feel like I'm grieving for a past version of myself. And I'm so grateful for the growth that I've been able to have through the trail. But it's also tough to feel like coming out on the other side of an experience where, like, to me, finishing felt much more like a new beginning of something rather than an end to a thing. And I think there's so many things that I learned about myself from the trail that aren't what I expected. I got some things that I was hoping for. I got to have a lot of time in nature. I got to have that meditative space. I got to know myself a lot better and on a lot different levels than I had before the trail, and built community with a lot of people. But there's also a lot of skills and unexpected experiences that I couldn't have predicted going into the trail. So, I mean, overall, it's a really remarkable experience, and I don't think the trail ever really leaves you. And I'm really enjoying right now going through all of my journals. I journaled every single day on the trail, and I did that for a few reasons. And I did that in the beginning because I wanted to have something to look back on. I wanted to be able to document it for myself and for my family and my friends, and have that to share and look back on. But also because you are hiking quite literally all day, like about 12 hours a day spent actively hiking, it's tough to actively be processing that experience while you're experiencing it. So right now, I really feel like I'm in the process of digesting this huge thing that I just went through. And it's been really interesting and beneficial for me to have these journals to look back on, to be going through them. I am updating all of my social media right now as I'm doing this, and it's it's really helping me to digest this experience and share that with everyone around me, but also process was what I wasn't able to process well. Something that's just so constant is happening, if that makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. There's the good bits, there's the okay bits, there's the not great bits, and there's the really bad bits. And as you've been putting things on social media, as you've kind of been going through it all, there was a video that you put on, there was a few that you put on, but one in particular about when you were really ill and you were crying and you were solo hiking and you didn't know what to do, where to go. And this video, obviously you in a vulnerable moment, which you've decided to share online, which obviously you're happy to do, but I'm sure you weren't expecting 43.7 million people to view this video.
Yep.
That's quite intense for anybody. How,
Mhm.
firstly, talk me through the experience of being ill and this whole thing, but also the response that I'm sure you, from 43 million people, there must have been a lot of messages and comments and good and bad responses.
Mhm. Yeah. So the actual being ill part, I'll go with that first. Um, so at the time, I didn't know that what I had was norovirus. I didn't know anyone else was sick. I was by myself. I thought it was just me. I thought maybe I had bad water, maybe I have food poisoning, but I was hiking along the trail. I had passed a couple of these guys and I sat down. I was like, I really don't feel well. And the people I had been kind of hiking near that day had gotten a little bit ahead of me. So I was like, oh, I'm just going to make a push. I'm going to get to camp. I walked about another couple miles and just immediately started vomiting into a bush. And I was like, well, I'm camping right here, apparently. And so I just started setting up my tent. It was like one tent stake going and vomiting in the bush, another tent stake, vomit in the bush. Horrible. I threw up probably 100 times, couldn't even keep down water. It got below freezing that night. I definitely had a fever. Um, and I do have a Garmin InReach device. That's like the safety device I have, but it can still be quite expensive to evac yourself. So since I was still in a position where I could walk, I wasn't like actively like totally incapacitated, but I was afraid that I would get to that point. I was like, I feel like I'm going to pass out. I can't keep anything down. And I had 15 miles to go still to get to town. So I was using my InReach device to message my family and say, hey, this is a situation. If I don't check in with you at these times, then like, you know, every time you send a message on a Garmin InReach, it sends you GPS coordinates. So if I had passed out, I hadn't checked in with them, there would have been help that could have gotten to me. But I started taking these videos of myself because I was alone. I was feeling scared. I was so sick. And sometimes I think it's really helpful to just talk out loud to yourself, to instead of having these racing thoughts of like, what's going to happen? Am I going to be okay? How do I get out of this? To just say it out loud, only be able to have really one thought at a time and line up like, this is what I'm thinking and this is what I'm going through right now. So that's what I was doing in that experience. And that next morning, I start hiking. I see, or at first, I just heard a car in the distance, but I couldn't see a road. And my thoughts were, okay, well, I'm going to continue on this path. I don't want to get off of the trail and I pass out, because if I pass out off the trail, then nobody's going to find me. So I keep walking, even though I'm like, that would be great to not have to continue and walk 15 more miles. But it wasn't the safe choice. So I keep walking. Eventually I can see the road, but there's still not a path down to it. So I continue once again. And eventually now I hit this dirt path, and there's like a direct dirt path going down to the road. And at that point, this is a point that I recorded in one of my videos where I am at this decision of, do I go down to the road and hitchhike by myself when I don't have phone service and have no idea who's going to pick me up? That could be a potentially dangerous situation, especially when I'm completely incapacitated, not in any position to defend myself if the person that picked me up wasn't a good character. And the other option is continue hiking, which I know I'll find other hikers eventually, but I don't know when. I could pass out on the trail, and I really don't think that I can walk 15 more miles. So in that moment, I decided to go down to the road. And I put my thumb up, I went to hitchhike, and it's like the first car pulled over. It was this big black truck. I can see like two men sitting in the front seat, and I'm like, well, hopefully I don't die today. And I immediately sent the license plate to my family. So I was like getting in this car, so they would have that information. That was like the only thing I could think of to do this in a safe way by myself. And one guy gets out of the passenger seat, and I recognize him. He was one of the two guys that I'd passed the night before. And so he's a PCT hiker. And so I just start crying. I'm so relieved. I'm like, I'm not being murdered today. Excellent. This is great. And the guy that gets out of the driver's seat, he goes, oh, I'm Kenny, the trail angel, who I've read about in the Far Out comments, which Far Out is the primary app that all of us hikers use to navigate. It has like comprehensive trail map, it has the water sources, different things like that. And you can leave comments for other hikers to read. So I had read about Kenny, who's someone that hosts people in the town of Big Bear, California. And so I knew that I was good at that point. It was so wonderful to just be able to be like, okay, I'm safe. I have made the right decisions. This could have turned out really poorly, but luckily for me, it didn't. And yeah, I think I made the best decisions with the information that I had at the time. And after I got in the car, we drove a couple miles down the road, and I start getting text messages because I get service. And I start finding out that other people are sick, and it's not just me. And Kenny said, oh, I also have 8 other sick hikers at my home that I'm hosting. And I was like, oh, okay, so something is clearly going on here. Something is going around. And, we ended up finding out that it was like a norovirus outbreak that really spread throughout a lot of the trail at that point. But it was a really scary thing to go through on my own. And the response to that was also really overwhelming and not something that I expected.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, what a story. I didn't realize that trail angel part. And I guess, when asking that, I'm thinking, is this going to be a bit of a horror story? But actually, although it is a really horrible experience for you to go through, it has this beautiful ending. And yeah, I think that's amazing. And I guess it's probably testament for a lot of the things that probably went wrong, but also a lot of the things that went right in your experience. Were there any other kind of standout stories of really amazing times, or just even mundane things? I'm sure it's pretty boring at times as well.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like at some points the days really did start to run together, but in a way that for me always felt really meditative. And I mean, I think there's kind of this balance, because at times where the trail itself was like less interesting or less mentally stimulating, I feel like I was hiking with really wonderful people and was able to form like really beautiful human connections. And at times where like the trail itself was like just the most beautiful thing I've ever seen, sometimes I got to share that with other people, and sometimes I just got to sit in solitude with that. And then at the other hand of that is also sometimes when the trail wasn't as visually stimulating and I wasn't with other people, I got to just have a relaxing time, be able to have a lot more self-reflection. And I think all of those parts are really important and really core to the experience of through hiking. It's not going to be rainbows and butterflies all the time. Like getting in the norovirus in the woods is absolutely terrible, but also it was such a beautiful experience to meet Kenny, meet other hikers at his home, and also just like I've never had an experience in my life where I've purely relied on just like the kindness and generosity from strangers. I don't think that's super common in modern society. And this warm, inviting environment really surrounds the trail communities. There's like Facebook pages for every town on the PCT that trail angels are willing to host you. They're like, oh, we'll give you rides, we'll make you pancakes. There's trail magic is something that basically you're hiking along the trail, you get to a random road intersection, and somebody's decided to host a cookout specifically for PCT hikers when you've been eating bars and like not real food for, the last 7 days. And when somebody all of a sudden offers you like a fresh anything, it feels so magical and so wonderful. And the more people that hear about the trail, the bigger this community has become. And I think it's just like a very wide range of people. And I think it's something that is really able to bring us all together in a way that I also haven't experienced. I think there's a lot that usually divides us, whether that's like nationality, background, political views, and everywhere on the trail, it's like none of these things really mattered, and I got to connect with people who I like probably wouldn't normally get to connect with. The trail is also like super international. I think um, more than half are non-American, even though it's an American trail. So I thought that was really interesting as well. And so I guess I just can't emphasize enough how much the human connection was and the community surrounding the trail was a core part of it, even though for most of the trail I was actively hiking on my own, but I often got to camp with people. I often got to like share meals with people. I got to, connect with people in towns. And also with all of the wildfires that happened this year and reroutes, sometimes you got to see people that you thought you might never see again, because a day apart on the trail can actually be a world apart, because you're just moving like this with somebody right ahead of you. And, even if they're only 30 miles ahead of you, you just might not see them again for the rest of the trail. But, someone takes an extra rest day, a zero, or, as a different reroute because of a fire, or as a different ride, whatever it is, then yeah, I don't know. There's just so much that really brings us together.
It's funny, isn't it? Yeah, it's a common place. It doesn't matter where you're from or
Mhm.
what age you are or any of these things. It's that shared experience that really brings humans together. But obviously that's like the best outcome that could have been.
Yeah.
However, my thought is, as a young woman, were you not scared at any point of firstly hiking by yourself and especially at nighttime, camping with people you don't know? What were your thoughts around that?
I have always felt safer in nature than I've felt in any city. Like, I most of the people, when there was a couple times when I was hiking with a couple groups, and most of the groups that I was hiking in, they were all men except for me, and I felt so confident that if anyone had given me a hard time, none of these people that I was hiking with would have hesitated a second to help me out or like make me more comfortable in a situation. But I didn't have I didn't have any situations where somebody really like crossed a boundary for me, or it's just it is such a community, and I think everybody is really just out there to support you, like getting to the end. Like we all have this common goal, and I think like it has to be like a certain type of person that decides to do this. And I think that filters out a lot of the people and a lot of the characters that like I might be afraid of. And I don't know. I mean, I've had some like bad experiences in my life, and all like none of those bad experiences have been in nature. So I guess I don't know. I never really felt afraid in that way. I mean, there were moments of like a little bit of a panic or a fear, but that was more of a okay. I'm ill in the woods, or like my feet are in excruciating pain, or I just took a really bad step and almost snapped my ankle in between a couple rocks, but I'm okay. So let's figure out how to get out of here and like figure out the next way forward. But in terms of people, I didn't have any issues on the trail.
That's amazing. And yeah, it's just I guess it's been where we're supposed to be. In nature, it's what's most natural. And kind of going back to that. But practically speaking,
Mhm.
what did you eat and how did you find food? What
Oh,
did you drink? How did you find water?
oh
Where
yeah.
did you sleep? And what are the rules in America for camping? Because in Scotland, where I am from, you have the right to responsible access, which literally means you can go anywhere as long as you don't damage anything. In
Mhm.
England, it's different again, but in Scotland, you can kind of camp wherever you want, basically. Whereas I'm under the impression that America is slightly different. So, practically speaking, can you talk me through these things that I'm sure anyone who's got 29 minutes in is like, but what did she eat? What did
Yeah.
she eat?
Yes. Okay. So I think the best place to start this question is that PCT is managed by the PCTA, so Pacific Crest Trail Association. And so that is the body that issues the permits. So if you're wanting to hike the PCT, you go on the PCTA's website and you apply for a wilderness like long distance permit. And this covers all of the areas that you're going to pass through the entire trail. And so if you obtain one of these permits and you start on your start date and you do a continuous hike, then you can essentially camp anywhere along the entire PCT unless it is specifically noted that like, hey, this 8 mile range is like part of blah, blah, blah property and you cannot camp here. But all of those areas where you can't camp are pretty well marked within our like map system within Far Out, which it's the PCT map by Gut Hooks is what we all download, and it's you download that offline, so we have access to that. It's really, really great resource. I would say like probably 99% of people on the trail are using that as their primary navigation system. And so yes, if you have the permit from the PCTA, that is really does allow you to camp pretty much wherever you want. So there on Far Out, you can see designated like campsites that somebody else has said, oh, this is like a nice flat spot. You know, this could be a good one. So usually at the beginning of the day, I would say, okay, well, you know, what mileage am I kind of doing? What's the elevation profile look like? About how far do I want to go today? And then I would look on the map and look at the topo map. You can kind of see based on the topographical lines, which areas might look a little bit flatter, what areas are more down in a valley rather than like up on a ridge line where it could be very windy. And that's how I would generally decide where I wanted to camp. Especially in the desert, you're also looking at your water sources because sometimes you're going like 20 miles between water sources and you want to make sure you're camping at least near water or you have enough water so that you can cook your food at night. And I would say that some people have stoves. I did carry a stove the entire trail, which is a little like jet boil mechanism with a stove on top. Some people, if you're an ultralighter, I'm not sure if you're familiar with the ultralight concept, is people will do what's called cold soaking, which essentially they bring a little plastic jar. The most common one is Talenti, is this ice cream like gelato brand, and people will go to town, eat this thing of ice cream, and then use that to just cold soak their food in, so they don't have to carry the extra weight of a stove because ounces are pounds and pounds are pain. So that's the ultralighter slogan as it goes.
I feel like that's a different type of pain, though. Just eating like cold sludge that you've carried about.
Mm-hmm. But you really, I mean, you don't have any way to store your food. So one, it's like you pack in what you pack out. We are all very aware of the leave no trace principles. So in terms of food that you're eating, it is a lot of really processed stuff. A lot of people do like a lot of bars, a lot of like protein bars. I ate a lot of these like Nature's Bakery fig bars. Big fan of those. You know, a lot of people end up eating a lot of candies because you just need to be able to like process things really quickly because so I'm a pretty small person. I was still eating over 4,000 calories a day and still losing weight because at certain points I was hiking like 30 miles a day. So the high caloric demands of thru hiking really demand that you eat so much, and you also don't want your food to be super, super heavy. So I would kind of look for foods that had at least 100 calories per 1 ounce of weight in the food and just pick things like that. I would eat a lot of like chickpea pasta. A lot of people do ramen. A lot of people, there are dehydrated meals that you can buy, but they tend to be on the more expensive side. So a lot of people kind of do makeshift versions on their own of that. There's a lot of great resources online for ways that you can come up with your own like backpacking meals from the store, but it depends on what's available in the towns. So in terms of, we call it resupplying when you go into towns and you get food, because like to my knowledge, I don't think hunting is allowed on the PCT. There's a couple areas where there's a lot of like different huckleberries and boysenberries up in the north, but other than that, I never really did any foraging because you don't really have time. Some people brought a fishing pole and did a little bit of fishing, but just in terms of like logistically, you're hiking 12 hours a day. Like you don't have time to like sit there and like go wait for a fish or whatever. And then if you cleaned your fish, like what are you going to do with that? You know, like we really don't want to attract additional animals to the trail. We don't like bury any food that you don't eat. You either eat it or you pack it out. So it's a little intense in that way, I guess. But you get used to the lifestyle, and then it makes the town food really exciting when you get to town. So um, usually I would look at um, the next stretch and be like, okay, well, I'm going this town to this town, and maybe it's this many off trail miles. So I look at that total mileage count between towns. I say, okay, what mileage am I averaging, or what do I think I want to do in this next section? And then divide that by like the total miles divided by how many miles I'm doing a day. Have a general sense of this is going to take me 4 days to do the stretch. Usually pack about half a day of extra food, and then I multiply that by how many calories I think I'm eating per day. So I just, you know, you want to make sure you're getting enough calories. You want to make sure you're still getting enough protein, meeting your nutritional needs. But yeah, I don't know. That doesn't answer your question. That's food.
And water. Did you just like
Oh,
find a stream and put
yeah,
a bottle down, kind of hope for the
yeah.
best?
So we have like everyone filters their water. I would recommend for anyone like looking to get into through hiking to you definitely need a water filter, and then also having some backup like aqua tabs or some way to treat your water if it's like really sus looking. If it's clear flowing water, usually you should just be fine by filtering it. But what I have, a lot of people use kind of a, it's called it like a CNOC is a common bag that you use, kind of like a flexible plastic water container that you use to collect your water. You can screw your filter onto that, and then you attach it to smart water bottle, because smart water bottles are much lighter than like a Nalgene water bottle or anything else. So this is again an ultralighter thing, which I've gotten a few comments on my social media asking like, why am I using a single use water bottle? And I'm like, if you think this is single use, this has been used for months. I think I used I had one water bottle, smart water bottle from around Big Bear, because I replaced all of my water bottles when I had norovirus, and I took one of those all the way to the end. So that water bottle lasted over 2,000 miles. It's,
Yeah,
but
that's not single use. I think that's fair to say.
yeah, so there's a lot of little things, and there's a lot of quirks to through hiking that I guess if you're outside of this like specific niche of, it's not even like the hiking community, and then it's the backpacking community, and then it's like the long distance backpacking, and then you're like, oh, and we're doing even a step further here, which it's quite interesting because a lot of people like just decide to do through hiking, like not necessarily with a ton of experience going in. And my personal philosophy is I do genuinely think anyone could do this. Like if you're physically able, I think anyone could do a through hike. It's really more just about wanting to. It's a lot more about like the drive, and if you want it badly enough, you can get through a lot of things just on that. You'll learn the skills along the way. A lot of people come in not really knowing that much, and you just kind of figure it out, you know?
And that, again, will go back to the community thing of it's such a niche of a niche. The amount of people who not only are you doing the through hiking, you're also on this specific trail, happen to be at the same time, happen to be at the same place. And
Mm-hmm.
then that bonds you together even further, which I guess then leads into why you did feel safe, why you did make friends, why you didn't feel lonely, and that aspect of it. But people aside, I think also anyone perhaps who does not live in America will think, what about the wildlife? What about the snakes and like you've got like mountain lions and like
Yeah.
bears and all of those like legit things when you're out in nature, you actually do have to think about that. And you
Yeah.
kind of alluded to not leaving any trace behind, which is obviously a huge environmental thing. But I also imagine it's so you don't attract perhaps predators that you don't want to be following you.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's for sure a reason to leave no trace as well, aside from just like environmental impact and, you know, hoping that the trail is something that future generations and people can enjoy from a conservation perspective. But they're like we're going into the wild. There is wildlife there, and that I never had any like super scary. Well, I had a couple scary rattlesnake encounters, but not like
Any rattlesnake encounter, sorry, it qualifies as a scary rattlesnake encounter.
well, talking about two rattlesnake encounters in the desert I had specifically because the first rattlesnake I'd ever seen, which was on this trail, it was like more than 10 feet long, and it was hiding under a bush, so I heard it before I saw it, and it just spooked me, and I jumped about a few feet back and just was like, oh, okay, So that one spooked me, but and I did know a couple people that have gotten bit by snakes on the trail. It's not without risk, but I think it's more of a calculated risk, because I think anything that you do in your life, or especially if you're an outdoorsy person or doing any like extreme sport, like there just are risks, and you have to like what is your risk tolerance? What are you willing to accept as a potential thing that could happen? Um, I guess we haven't talked about trail names. So trail names, basically everybody on the trail is given like a fake name that you somehow earn from like something silly that you've done on the trail, or just like a common quirk that you have, or could really be anything. Um, and there's one guy who was named Lucky because he got bit by a rattlesnake in the desert, and he said to himself, well, I'm pretty sure that I read somewhere one time that 1 in 4 rattlesnake bites is a dry bite. So therefore, I'm just going to keep hiking so I don't have to evac myself. And so he walked out, went to a hospital, and they were like, I guess you were right. Like, you're not having symptoms and you're not dying. So I think yours happened to be a dry bite, but like in the future, probably not a smart plan to just bank on, oh, maybe there's a chance that I'll be fine. Um, so people earn trail names that way.
I feel like anyone who's earned the name of Lucky is immediately a bit of a red flag of
Yeah,
what have you done to earn that name on that trail? Oh my gosh.
there's some really funny trail names too. I mean, people,
What
I
was
had
yours?
my trail name. Oh, well, my nice trail name is Birdie, and that's what I went by. I got that like a little around halfway through the trail is when I finally accepted that. But I had many, many suggestions of things that I denied, because I was like, that is not something that I can accept. Because people can suggest them, but you're like, I'm not gonna take that one. But what I tell people now is my trail name is Birdie, but my alter ego trail name is Gremlin because I have been known to have gremlin-like tendencies apparently on the trail. I guess if I like get really hungry, I'm like, like hunching over my food, or like just doing silly things like jumping in really cold water, or I don't really know how to explain it other than that, but it was a funny thing that I got made fun of for in a endearing way by a lot of people that I hiked
I love the alter ego that you have.
with.
And if you compare like pre-Pacific Crest Trail you to post-Pacific Crest Trail you,
Mhm.
what are the main differences that you see?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'm a lot more confident in myself and my ability to do things. I also think I am able to be much more self reflective and dig deeper into the roots of what I'm feeling. So instead of just like, you know, having an emotion one day or like going through something, instead of just being like, okay, like I'm just dealing with that, it's more of a, well, where is that coming from? And being able to be a little bit more in tune with my body. And I think some part of that comes from the trail in terms of like through hiking is not gonna like so I think I thought at the beginning of the trail that it was gonna hurt while I got into shape. Like I was like, oh, it's gonna hurt in the beginning and then it will stop hurting. But the reality is you just like get more comfortable with discomfort, and it never really like stops being hard. Like it's gonna be hard the whole time, but I think like the joy that you're getting and the experiences from nature are really outweigh that pain. And in my memory, I like don't really remember how much it hurt to actually be doing that, hiking thousands of miles. I had plantar fasciitis for over 2,000 miles. My feet really, really hurt. But I also learned how to identify in my body, like, well, not every time you're experiencing pain is really indicative of a long-term injury. And not every injury that you have is something that you like can't work through. And so I think it's being able to listen to your body and identifying times where, is this something that I can push through, or is this something that's going to resolve itself? And then really just thinking about the resources that you have around you to deal with whatever tough things you're going through at the time. So in terms of how I was before and how I am now, I just yeah, I just think I have a much stronger sense of self, and yeah, more confidence in my ability to do whatever it is that I want to do, and that taking risks, or like taking a little bit of a leap of faith in something that just feels right to me and I feel it in my gut, even if it's not something that I can necessarily explain to other people why it's so important to me or why it's what I'm being told to do, that I just like have the ability to trust myself and know that like that's enough, and I trust in my future self to be able to figure out wherever I am in the future.
Has your outlook on life changed?
um I don't know, I think I'm very optimistic. Like I think there's just so many things to explore and so many wonderful opportunities. And I mean, well, the thing is, some days, we've talked about that this is like the niche within the niche within the niche thing to be doing. And I think the further you get into any hobby, the more you realize that there are still other people that are like way better at this hobby than you are or will ever be. Like you're like, oh, I'm hiking across the country. And then you meet a guy who's this is his sixth time hiking across the country and he has hiked in all the other countries. I'm like, okay, well, here
It's
I
like,
was.
oh man.
Or I think it's also just opened my mind to how many other fun outdoorsy things I can potentially explore in my life. And I'm so excited to have opportunities to like, I don't know, like try ski touring, or like I've been getting more into rock climbing since getting off the trail. And I did my first multi pitch in Squamish, BC, up in Canada, a couple weeks ago. And it's been a really cool to meet all of these other people that are also interested in outdoorsy activities, but also maybe at a level that I haven't gotten to experience before. And that just is able to like, I can push myself in new ways through my connections with other people.
And what does one do when they have achieved 2,650 miles of hiking? What do you do after that? Because no one really talks about that.
Yeah, yeah. What do you do after that? You know, I think that's something that I'm going through right now, and I'm not ready to announce it in a public way, but I have a really interesting idea that I have been putting a lot of like research effort into. I'm excited to see if I can make it work. But yeah, in the next couple months, I'm planning to make a move to somewhere new, and I'm excited to see how that goes. But in the meantime, I've been spending time a little bit like traveling around the Pacific Northwest, visiting some family and family friends, especially because the wildfires on the PCT this year disrupted the trail in a pretty significant way. So there's a couple sections of the trail that I had to do detours or reroutes or just go around because all of the communities around have been closed. So I wanted to see if those reopened, and a couple have. So just last week, I was able to go back and hike the section around Crater Lake that had previously been closed. And then next week, I'll be able to go hike a 57-mile stretch from Etna to Side Valley in Northern California that I'm filling in. So get to patch in a couple of those areas. That's what I'm doing right now, doing a lot of outdoorsy adventurous stuff. I've been climbing, I've been doing some whitewater rafting, more hiking, a lot of running, and exploring.
Just taking
So
it chill, taking it chill.
it's super chill.
And so people who are listening to this, if you want them to have one key takeaway from this conversation that they kind of think about for the rest of the day, and perhaps, just something you want them to think about, what would it be?
I don't know, just trust yourself. Like, trust your gut. If there's something that you really want to do, you have all of the tools and skills to be able to make that happen. I think it's really easy to find reasons not to do things. Like, if you want to find a reason not to do it, I'm sure you can think of something. But if you just set that aside, and if you think about, well, what's really holding you back is what's holding you back fear, and is that a good reason for you? Like, is that a good enough reason? And if the answer is no, then do it. If it's, if you're scared that like people won't be able to do it with you, I think the PCT is a really great example of, if the reason you're not doing something is because you don't want to do it alone, I think you should do it alone, do it anyway, and you'll find the people that you were looking for to do that with. They're already doing it too. So I think there's across the world and in so many things that you could want to do, there's wonderful communities in all of these places. You just have to be willing to put yourself out of your comfort zone to achieve that. And I think getting comfortable with being uncomfortable is the space where you can find personal growth, and that'll lead you down the path that you want to be on.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I think it's really interesting because in this world of connectivity and social media, it's almost easy. It's never been easier to find people who are like-minded to you and that you can do all of these cool things with. But equally, in the same measure, it's never been more difficult because it's really hard to actually have a real connection with people because it's all digital, it's all online, and
Yeah.
it's not that online is bad, but you need to also get there. You need to stand on the trail and look for these people
Yeah.
and do all of these things. So yeah, great points. And if someone wants to follow you online and keep up to date with hearing about your journal entries in retrospect of the Pacific Crest Trail as well, but also seeing what you get up to next, where should they go?
Both Instagram and TikTok, I am at Noelle Jean Seward. So my entire full name. Noelle is Noelle, middle name Jean, Jean, last name is Seward, Seward. And that is where you can locate me.
Incredible. Yeah, you can watch the 43.7 million viewed video on Instagram, and
Yeah.
who even knows on TikTok what it was, and all of these things. I feel like TikTok is just times a million, whatever. But yeah, keep up to date and see what you're up to, and I'll link those in the description of the show as well, so people can easily get onto them. And thank you so much for coming on and talking me all through your experience. I've really enjoyed this conversation, and it's yeah, just spending time in nature, I think, is something that is such a simple fix to so many problems. And, you know, if it was a prescription drug, you would put it out to people, wouldn't you? Of
Yeah.
take some time in nature.
Well, and I think a key point to that too is just something that was so calming and meditative about the trail, and like could be that prescription that you're looking for, is the simplicity and the routine. And recently I got some mental health video that came up on my Instagram feed saying, oh, like, you'll get rid of your anxiety and depression and whatever mental health challenges you're struggling with if you just get sunlight in your eyes every day, get exercise every day, take time to meditate, if you're reading a book every day. And I'm like, these are all things that I did on the trail, but not necessarily on purpose. It's just a byproduct of being out there, listening to audiobooks, having time in nature, having time to breathe. And it is just this fully immersive meditative experience, and getting that nature time and all of the endorphins that you experience from hiking constantly, all day, every day for months. And that's why I think so many people have the experience of, the trail being some of the happiest they've ever been. So, yeah.
Thanks so much for all of your stories, and I'm excited to see what is up next for you.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks so much for having me.